When the Sega Saturn went up against the PlayStation 1 and even the Nintendo 64, it was the first to die that console generation. When some people say it was the high price tag, but one thing's for sure, it really wasn't the games. I am the Game Collector, and this is Second Opinion Games, and today I count down my top 10 Sega Saturn games.
Second Opinion Games.
Starting things off with an honorable mention, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Now, even though it's all in Japanese, there is an English patch out there. However, the list I'm trying to make today is of US releases only. Otherwise, it would have looked entirely different. I'm going to make my own top 10 imports farther down the road. But if I had to say, I would put this somewhere right around number 2 or possibly even number 1. It is that good, and it's a shame we never got it because the Sega Saturn died way too early. So, let's move on from here. Number 10, Bug, not Bug 2, the sequel, even though the graphics were definitely better, and so were the controls. I really like the simplisticness of Bug 1. You're a little tiny bug, and you look like a 2D sprite in a somewhat 3D world. It's sort of on a grid. You can walk up walls and do other stuff bugs do. It has a little bit of an over-the-top attitude when you pick up a power-up that says, Bug Juice! You have a health bar, and it's just an adorable little game. Now, I know Mario 64 definitely would have cleaned this game's clock, and it might just be because this was the very first Sega Saturn game I played, picking it up in the bargain bin alongside my Sega Saturn for like $3, but I completely fell in love with the system, and it all started with this game. Number 9, Clockwork Knight 2. Now, this is a little bit different from Bug. This is a 3D character model in a 2.5D space, which means most of the time he's running around on a 2D plane, but sometimes they can shift perspectives. Now, the creativity here is everything. The first Clockwork Knight game was just a little bit too short, and they managed to lengthen it out to be a full, well-rounded package in Clockwork Knight 2, with lots of secrets to explore, and I really love it when my protagonist is a really small little creature in an oversized world, whether it be just a really tiny guy on the screen as like a dot, or even just exploring some kid's bathroom. I really like this style of gameplay, and there's fun little sections here, like little minecart levels, and running around trying to figure everything out is just amazing. You never know what could possibly happen next, and that's just what makes this game shocking. Number 8, Guardian Heroes, another 2D style beat 'em up, but you could jump back and forth between 3 different planes. You could also play with a couple of your friends here, and you could have a different experience every time because of the branching storylines, which means the end boss could be completely different every single time you play it, or at least a couple of times. It's not really infinite replayability, but the fact that you could level up your character any way you want sort of means that it's a heck of a replayable game. There's even a full-fledged fighting game in here, and you could play as the different characters that you defeated in battle. So as you play through the game, you unlock more stuff for that, but the main game is superb. I love the magic system and just the overall hacking and slashing. You do have a block button, so hits aren't completely cheap, but most of the time you're just going to be smacking the heck out of everybody, just trying to get to the next level and seeing all of the beauty that the Sega Saturn had to offer. Number 7, In the Hunt. Now, I really like me a good shooter, and In the Hunt looks awesome. It's sort of like a Metal Slug style, and I love submarines, and that's what I get here. You could scrape across the surface, blowing up everything, or be underneath the water, diving down deep and shooting stuff, dropping depth charges or missiles that come out of the top hatch, or just a regular old shooting forward, picking up power-ups non-stop, and I really like how the levels sort of dramatically change from one to the other. You even fight Poseidon himself in one gruesome match. Now, everything's not all good here, as there is crippling slowdown throughout the vast majority of the game. Also, the sound effects, I think, are a bit better with the Sega Saturn version than the PlayStation 1 or even the arcade version of this game. Any way you look at it, I always come back to the Saturn version because I like it the most, and sometimes I need that crippling slowdown in order to dodge some of the bullets here because it's just a tough game from start to finish, and I just can never stop playing. Number 6, Die Hard Arcade. Before showing the game, look at the minigame that you could play right from the start of it, where you're a ship trying to blow up submarines. Yeah, that's just awesome. This was an arcade game that people used to pay $0.25 to play. I don't know why anyone would do that. Anyway, back to the real game, Die Hard Arcade, where you play as John McClane, I guess that's Bruce Willis, running through a building trying to beat up everybody. Occasionally you do pick up weapons like a machine gun or just your regular pistol, or a freaking rocket launcher that you fire indoors. There's those QTE events too, where you have to run around the corner and punch people out or jump at a certain time. Otherwise, you might lose some life or have to fight some extra people on the stage. This is just great because it's hilarious to play, and it is great to play with a friend cooperatively, unlike all those fighting games that just make you hate your friend for being that much better than you. I really can play this all day, every day, because even though it's simple and straightforward, I just can't get enough of it. Number 5, Burning Rangers. Firefighters are freaking awesome. And this 3D world where you have to run around putting out fires and saving people's lives is unbelievably cool. Sure, it might be a little too over-ambitious for what the Sega Saturn can do, but that's half the charm of it. The fact that the Saturn can't actually pull off these graphics, and sometimes you really can tell. However, when you're running around and putting out fires, you're still going to have a great time. And if you get too lost with these levels, you can just hit a simple button, and then a girl will come over and tell you exactly where to go next, so you never truly get lost. Just run around, saving people, and putting out fires in this well-rounded 3D adventure that definitely should have never made it onto this console. I really wish they would have re-released it on the Dreamcast with all the bugs and maybe some cleaned up graphics here and there. However, I'll take it just the way it is. Number 4, Albert Odyssey, a working designs classic. Now, this is one of those JRPGs. That means it's a turnstile based, and it's also sort of like a 16-bit game, but with much better graphics. So if you love the Final Fantasy VI and even the Final Fantasy VIIs out there, well, then you will fall in love with this game. It doesn't have as many cutscenes as some of the other ones, but that's because it's all on one disc, and the game is freaking huge. The music sounds beautiful from start to finish. There's even some dialogue tree paths that you could always go down. They don't actually change the game at all, more like they're just sort of funny. You could just pick the most awkward conversations to possibly have with people, and that's what I really just love doing. And it's definitely the best RPG experience you could have on the console, even if the random battles do happen a little bit too often. Number 3, Sonic Jam, and this is definitely my jam. You have Sonic 1, 2, 3, Sonic and Knuckles. You can put the little cards together, but what I really like about this the most is that the whole game was built from the ground up for the Sega Saturn. It's not one of those quick little ports over. You could play in a 3D world, also trying to see what a 3D Sonic game would be like. The controls are quite good. I can't believe that they managed to screw up the controls with Sonic R when they had these all just ready to go. And when you start jumping in and playing a good old game of Sonic the Hedgehog, you could even set it to easy mode, which means that you can fly through levels really darn fast. Heck, in even Sonic 1, you could turn on the spin dash, which is something that it just didn't have. And I really like that too. Sonic 2 is always my favorite Sonic experience, and it's just better here, giving you a much more streamlined version of the game. So if you missed out on Sonic Knuckles and Sonic 3, well then you have no excuse now but to go back and play this very game. Number 2, Galactic Attack. This system was known for some great shooters, and this one is actually affordable for the system. Galactic Attack is a port of the arcade version of the game. You could still play with some Saturn elements, which means a little bit clearer music, and then blow up everything. I love the backgrounds, they're so amazing, and how that one stage sort of seamlessly morphs into another. It's just a beautiful game. You have that whole dropping bombs with missiles thing that other Working Designs game on the PlayStation 1 seemed to also take a hold. And this is just a great game from the second you start playing to the second you finish. Your ship never gets too powerful. The learning curve is just right. Getting destroyed by a single bullet that you lost track of definitely happens, but that just pushes you to keep playing it again and again, which is what a good shooter should do, and this is clearly one of the best. Number 1, light gun games like House of the Dead, where you shoot a whole bunch of zombies. You don't have to play the arcade mode. You could play the Saturn mode, where you have different characters that you could pick. Like this one guy with a really strong shot, but he only has 2 bullets in the gun before you have to reload. This will get you hit quite often, but will also have you flying through the game ridiculously fast. So maybe he's not for you, and you want to pick a different guy. The bosses are still really great here. I think they're actually quite a bit better than House of the Dead 2. They usually offer quite a bit more strategy. Now, some people don't like this game because it's somewhat full of glitches, in which case you can play Virtual Cop 2, which is like me saying that there's 2 number 1s here. I'm basically saying that every light gun game is great for the Saturn, except for maybe one. You should look at my top 10 worst Sega Saturn games if you want to know which one isn't the one you want to get, but Virtual Cop 2 is probably the better overall package. Little guys jump out and you just pick them off left and right, and then you really feel how accurate this Sega Saturn light gun can truly be, and this is the best example of such. But when you get in that rhythm of picking off guys, sometimes a hostage might show up and then you'll get them killed. You know, most of the time I actually lose lives from shooting hostages more than getting shot myself. Virtual Cop 2 and House of the Dead and all of the other light guns is why you definitely need to own a Sega Saturn. But of course, wait, I do have one more number 1. That's right, if you have the Sega Saturn Twin Stick, then Virtua On will also be your number 1, because you get to use giant mechs to do battle in one-on-one combat, and it feels great, like arcade perfect great. I even like this Virtua On game a heck of a lot more than Virtua On the Sega Dreamcast. I personally think that game's garbage. This one is sublime, and the more you play at it, the better you get, because it truly is all about skill and also powerful super weapons that I clearly love to use. This is one of the most fast and frantic Sega Saturn games I think I played, and when you get the final hit in on what is a definite close match, or maybe take out the end boss of the entire game, the adrenaline rush is just unmatched from any other Saturn experience. And that's why it's my number 1 pick for my favorite Sega Saturn game. But of course, that's just my opinion. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this list. I had a great time making it because the Sega Saturn is awesome. And there is a ton more great Sega Saturn games out there like Magic Knight Ray Earth and Daytona and some of the other driving games that I just didn't have time to talk about or didn't want to actually make my top 10. So the Saturn, I think, might have had more good games than the Nintendo 64. If you don't agree with me, or if you do, let me know in the comments down below of which console you think was better. So until later, I will see you again, guys.